By every rule that should govern a city, Las Vegas should not exist. And by every trend now bearing down on it, the city that does exist should already be dying. Consider the sentence it is living under. It sits in the Mojave Desert, one of the harshest environments in North America, on about 4 inches of rain a year. It has no river running through it. It has no lake of its own. The groundwater beneath it was never enough to support a town of any real size. It is the fastest warming major city in the United States, a place that hit 120 degrees in the summer of 2024 and builds up the most intense urban heat island in the country. And roughly 90% of its water comes from a single reservoir, Lake Mead, which has dropped about 170 feet since the year 2000 and is now grinding along near the lowest level it has reached since it was first filled in the 1930s. That is the profile of a city in retreat. A place people should be leaving. A slow-motion ghost town. And yet, Las Vegas is not shrinking. It is growing. Over 2 million people now live in the valley. 40 million visitors arrive every year. The economy is booming. The construction cranes are up. And the population has been climbing for decades, straight through the heat and the drought and the shrinking lake. So here is the question this video is actually about. Not why is Las Vegas in danger? Everyone knows the dangers. The real question, the strange one, is this, given all of that, why isn't it dead already? Why is the most water-starved, fastest warming big city in America not just surviving, but thriving? And the answer is not luck. And it is not that the threats are exaggerated. The threats are completely real. The answer is that Las Vegas did something no other American city did. And it started doing it 20 years before it was forced to. Once you understand what that was, you will never look at this city the same way again. But first, we have to be honest about just how bad the odds really are. Because the survival only makes sense once you see the death sentence clearly. Start with the heat, because it is the part you can feel. Las Vegas has warmed by roughly 6 degrees Fahrenheit since 1970, about 3 times the rate of the planet as a whole, which makes it the fastest warming major city in the country. On the 7th of July, 2024, the airport thermometer hit 120 degrees, the highest reading in the city's recorded history. And because the valley is paved over with hundreds of square miles of asphalt and concrete that soak up the sun all day and radiate it back all night, the city builds one of the most intense heat islands in America, so the nights barely cool. This is a place where, for a growing stretch of the year, simply being outside in the afternoon is a genuine physical danger. Now the water, which is worse because you cannot air condition your way out of it. Las Vegas has essentially no water of its own. It leans almost entirely on the Colorado River, delivered through Lake Mead. And the Colorado River is a river in structural decline. It was divided up among 7 states back in 1922 on the assumption that it carried at least 16.5 million acre-feet of water a year. Its actual long-term flow is closer to 12 or 13. More water was promised than the river ever reliably held. And now, with the basin warming and drying, Lake Mead sits near its all-time low, sliding toward the elevation, known as Dead Pool. The point below which no water can pass through Hoover Dam at all. So put it together. A city with killing heat, no local water, and a lifeline that is running dry. On paper, this is not a place with a future. On paper, Las Vegas should be one of the great cautionary tales of the American West. And there was a moment when the paper nearly became real. In 2002, the Colorado River produced only about 40% of its average flow. It was, at the time, the lowest flow on record, and it marked the beginning of the long decline that continues today. Lake Mead started to fall, and Las Vegas, which in that era was one of the single fastest growing cities in the entire country, sprawling outward with new master-planned communities and green lawns and golf courses, ran straight into a wall. It hid its allocation from the river. It had, essentially, run out of room to grow on the water it was entitled to. Doug Bennett, who ran conservation for the Southern Nevada Water Authority, described that moment in a way that captures it perfectly. It was, he said, like having a credit card pulled from your hands. That is the instant most cities would have kept doing exactly what they were doing, growing on borrowed time, betting the drought was temporary, pushing the reckoning onto whoever came next. Las Vegas did the opposite. It treated 2002 not as a bad year, but as a preview of the permanent future. And it made a decision that, in hindsight, is the entire reason the city is still alive. It decided to sever the link between growing and using more water. To get bigger and thirstier at the same time was no longer an option, so it set out to get bigger while getting less thirsty. And it started that work 2 full decades before the crisis reached its peak. That head start is the first reason Las Vegas isn't dead. Here is the second, and it is a genuinely elegant piece of thinking. To understand it, you have to let go of a basic assumption about water, which is that the amount you use is the amount that matters. For Las Vegas, it isn't. What matters is not how much water you use. It is how much you consume, meaning how much of it never comes back. And Las Vegas recycles almost every drop of water used indoors, nearly 99% of it. When you flush a toilet, run a shower, wash your hands, or do the dishes anywhere in the valley, in a home, an office, a casino, a hotel, that water does not disappear. It is captured, carried to a treatment plant, cleaned, and returned to Lake Mead. And when Nevada returns water to the lake, it earns a credit against what it takes out. The technical term is return flow credits, and the effect is almost magical. Water used indoors is, in the accounting that governs the river, effectively free. Nevada can pull far more than its official allocation out of Lake Mead, as long as the water it consumes, the water that never returns, stays under the limit. Sit with what that means. The entire indoor city, every shower and every hotel room on the Strip, every dishwasher in every restaurant, every toilet in 2 million homes, barely touches the river's bottom line, because nearly all of it goes back. And this is why the thing everyone points to as the symbol of Las Vegas waste, the dancing fountains at the Bellagio, is almost irrelevant to the actual math. According to the Water Authority's own figures, all the casinos on the Strip combined account for just 3 to 4% of the city's consumptive water use. The neon spectacle that looks so absurd in a desert was never the problem. The villain was never the Strip. So if indoor use is basically free, and the casinos barely count, then what actually consumes Las Vegas's water? The answer is the thing that evaporates and never comes back: outdoor water. And that is where the city aimed its entire war. Roughly 60% of the water supplied to the Las Vegas Valley is used outdoors, on landscaping, and unlike the water indoors, water sprayed on a lawn under the desert sun largely evaporates. It is gone. It does not return to the lake, and so every drop of it counts against the city's consumption, which meant the path to survival ran directly through the American lawn. So Las Vegas declared war on grass, not as a slogan, as policy, with money and law behind it. The Water Authority began paying people, in cash, to tear out their turf. $3 for every square foot of grass replaced with desert landscaping. Since 1999, that program has removed around 250 million square feet of grass from the valley, saving something on the order of 217 billion gallons of water. Starting in 2003, new homes were forbidden from planting grass in their front yards at all. And in 2021, Nevada passed a law banning what it called non-functional grass, the purely decorative strips that line medians and parking lots and business parks, and are never walked on, ordering them ripped out entirely. The logic is brutal and precise. A square foot of grass drinks about 73 gallons of water a year. A square foot of drip irrigated desert landscaping drinks about 18. So the city is, block by block, yard by yard, physically removing its own thirst from the ground, converting the parts of itself that evaporate water into parts that don't. And now we arrive at the payoff, the number that should not be possible, the single statistic that answers the entire question of why this city is still alive. Between 2002 and 2025, Las Vegas cut its water use per person by 58%. It went from around 211 gallons per person per day to roughly 95, nearly cut in half, and then some. That alone would be impressive. But here's the part that stops you cold. Over that same period, the valley added approximately 876,000 new residents, plus tens of millions of annual visitors. The city grew enormously. And despite all those extra people, the total amount of water the community consumes did not go up. It went down. Las Vegas used less total water in 2025 than it did in 2002, as a dramatically larger city. Its consumptive use fell by tens of billions of gallons, even as more than 800,000 new residents moved in. Read that again, because it is the whole thing. Las Vegas did what nearly every expert and economist assumes is impossible. It broke the link between growth and water. It grew up without growing thirstier. Every other assumption about desert cities, that more people must mean more water, that growth and scarcity cannot coexist, Las Vegas simply violated, on purpose, through 20 years of relentless discipline. But water accounting, however clever, cannot beat 120 degrees, and it cannot beat a reservoir dropping toward dead pool. So the third reason Las Vegas isn't dead is that alongside the conservation, it engineered its way around the two physical threats that the accounting could not touch. Against the heat, the answer is the same one that made the city possible in the first place. It is built as a machine for not being in the desert. Air conditioning here is not a comfort. It is life support. And the entire urban fabric, the sealed hotels, the enclosed malls, the covered walkways, the parking structures, is designed so that a person can move through the hottest city in the country and rarely stand in its actual air. The city survives the heat by, in effect, refusing to be outside in it, against the falling lake. The Water Authority did something that looked almost paranoid at the time, and now looks like foresight. While other states were still arguing over allocations, Las Vegas quietly spent roughly $1.5 billion to build what locals call the third straw, a new intake tunnel and a low lake level pumping station that reach down to near the very bottom of Lake Mead. The purpose is stark. Even if the reservoir falls all the way to dead pool, the level at which the tap below Hoover Dam shuts off for everyone downstream, Las Vegas will still be able to draw its water out from underneath. The city built its lifeboat years before the ship began to sink. Picture what all of this produces, at ground level, for a person who has no idea any of it is happening. A tourist steps off a plane in July into a wall of 115-degree air, and within 90 seconds is inside a sealed, chilled concourse. They will spend 3 days moving between air-conditioned boxes, drinking water without a second thought, never once realizing they are standing in the driest, hottest major city in America. Drinking water pumped from the bottom of a reservoir at its lowest point in a century. Water that was very likely running through someone else's shower a week ago and will be cleaned and sent back to the lake again after theirs. The entire miracle is invisible, on purpose. That invisibility is the product working exactly as designed. So that is the answer. That is why Las Vegas isn't dead. A 20-year head start that began with the shock of 2002. An accounting trick that made the indoor city almost weightless on the river by recycling nearly everything. A war on outdoor grass that removed the city's own thirst by the hundreds of millions of square feet. And a pair of engineering bets on cooling and on the third straw that neutralized the heat and the falling lake. Together, they turned the most vulnerable major city in the American West into arguably the most prepared one. But now comes the honest part. And it is the part that separates the truth from a feel-good story. because there is a hard difference between not dead and safe. Everything Las Vegas has done has bought time. It has not bought escape. And the buffer is thinner than the success story suggests, for 3 reasons. The first is that conservation has a floor. You can only cut so far. Las Vegas is now down around 95 gallons per person per day, and pushing toward a goal of 86 by 2035. But every additional gallon is harder to find than the last, because the easy targets, the lawns, the leaks, the waste, have mostly been taken. And the warming climate is pushing in the opposite direction. As the city gets hotter, projections suggest per person water use will actually creep back up by something like 9 gallons a day, as plants and people need more. The city is running up a down escalator, and the escalator is speeding up. The second is that none of this changes the fundamental dependency. After everything, Las Vegas still draws roughly 90% of its water from a single river it barely controls. A river being drained far upstream mostly to grow feed for cattle, and governed by a legal framework whose current rules expire at the end of 2026, with no replacement yet agreed. Las Vegas conserved its way to a position of remarkable strength within its own borders, and it is still, ultimately, at the mercy of decisions made by other states over a river that is shrinking regardless of what any single city does. And the third is simply that the trend has not turned. The lake is still falling. The basin is still warming. The city has gotten dramatically better at using less, and the river has gotten dramatically worse at providing more. And those 2 lines are in a race whose outcome is not settled. So the real answer to why Las Vegas isn't dead is not that it found a way out. It is that it became the one city that saw the trap coming and spent 20 years learning, with extraordinary discipline, how to live inside it. It did not defeat the desert. It made a truce with it, gallon by gallon. And it has to renegotiate that truce every single year. Which is why the real symbol of this city is not the fountains on the strip. It is a front yard in an ordinary neighborhood where a lawn used to be, now a bed of gravel and a few desert plants fed by a thin drip line. The grass torn out and hauled away for $3 a square foot. Multiply that yard by hundreds of thousands. Underneath the whole valley, the water from every shower and sink is running quietly back toward the lake to be used again. And 30 miles out, at the bottom of a reservoir stained with a bathtub ring, 170 feet tall, the third straw is drinking steadily from water that keeps dropping toward the intake. The city is not saved. It is being kept alive, deliberately, one recycled and rationed gallon at a time. And every person who lives there, every tourist who flies in for the weekend, is part of the machine that keeps it breathing, whether they ever know it or not. Las Vegas should be dead already. The only reason it isn't